Good evening. The school committee workshop and business session of January 28th, 2026 will now come to order. This meeting is being recorded and will be made available for viewing on the Methuen Public Schools website. Secretary, would you please call the roll?
Present.
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 Here. All are present. We now need a motion and a second to accept tonight's agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Motions from Member Keegan, seconds from the Vice Chair. Any discussion? Not, we'll vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. We'll now rise for the flag salute. Do we have anyone in the audience who is here for public participation? No, we did receive written correspondence. I have a copy. I'll read it into the record. This is from Alejandro Baez regarding the items before us tonight. He says, through you, Honorable Mayor Beauregard, good evening, members of the school committee, its officers, the mayor, and the community as a whole. For the record, my name is Alejandro Baez, and I live at 152 Center Street. I am addressing you tonight with the hope that my words as a constituent holds weight during your vote and consideration. Specifically, you all have an executive session tonight to deliberate about the consolidation of both the city and school IT departments. I respectfully ask that you table this discussion until after the charter review workshop being held this Thursday, January 29th. I think it is prudent to withhold this conversation due to the looming broad discussion over charter changes revolving around consolidation. Mr. Mayor, thank you for your update this afternoon regarding your efforts for consolidation. I acknowledge and admire the length you have gone to make this happen. It is clear that public opinion is in favor of consolidation, and many of us are worried that your comments are a preamble to a potential surrender of those efforts by asking this body as a whole to drop the current lawsuit. We understand the current predicament of the schools and their leadership, but that is why prioritizing efficiency might be the way to go. I only ask that you all delay this executive session through a motion to table so that the conversation could be as open as possible with the ends of finding the best possible solutions with peace. Alejandro. That's all we received in terms of public participation, so at this time I will close public participation. If you're not able to make a meeting in person, for public participation, you can send an email to Susan Shanti at snscionti@methuen.k12.ma.us before 3 p.m. on the day of the school committee meeting. I just wanted to share a brief housekeeping item. In case anybody's watching, you might notice the presence of member of the Methuen police force here with us. Going forward, similar to city council meetings, there's presence of law enforcement simply to keep the peace and ensure the safety of the public. So we do have an officer here with us tonight, and we'll have that going forward. At this point, I will invite Dr. Golubsky to start the quarterly review presentation.
Okay, thank you very much. I am presenting the slides for this evening's presentation. This is our quarter 2 update as we're in our second year of our 3-year strategy plan. So I will move through each of the objectives, which are, I'm sure, becoming familiar to you, talk about some recent updates. I have the humanities supervisors with us here tonight, so you can put some faces to the names that we've been referencing and ask any more direct questions that you may have about reading and literacy in general. So as you know, in Objective 1, we're focused on accelerating literacy development and language acquisition across all subject areas, really trying to make the responsibility for those improvements widespread among staff and administrators. And so today I want to talk a little bit about CKLA, the launch and professional development, PRISM, LAN, lots of acronyms, which boil down to the support that we receive from DESE in implementing our new curriculum. And I'll share the middle of the year literacy benchmarks, give a quick update on investigating history, which also has a heavy literacy component in our social studies curriculum for the upper school, and share some good news about early literacy high dosage tutoring. So on this slide, I wanted to share just some of the feedback I've received from supervising principals and other administrators in the building is that it's, oh boy, just a second, I lost my presentation. So nice to hear students talking about really meaningful topics of discussion that appear to be maybe beyond their age or grade level, but are a part of CKLA. Just a second. The touchscreen got me. They're coming, I hope. Okay, we're good. Are we doing better? Okay. Okay. So I was talking about how the administrators and people visiting the classrooms really love to hear students talking about topics of discussion, and I want to share with you what some of those topics were because they've evolved from the knowledge portion of the CKLA curriculum. So, for instance, in kindergarten, you can hear students discussing how a love of plants inspired people like George Washington and Johnny Appleseed to improve lives and communities. In grade 1, students are talking about how body systems work together, talking about digestion, for example, in small and large intestines. In grade 2, students are talking about exploring the beginnings of ancient Greek civilization. You'll hear discussion, debate about Athens and Sparta, Socrates, Plato. And in grade 3, how scientists classify animals in multiple ways. The Middle Ages in grade 4, and in K2, talk about letter representations for sounds and how they form when reading and writing. So these units were deliberately chosen for the CKLA curriculum. Some are a part of the curriculum and others are what we call choice units. So the supervisors and I elected for content that related to science, in some historical categories where we felt like we were weak in other curricula that we have. And then teachers are also working on mechanical usage of knowledge and skills, shifting to sound-based phonics instruction, beginning to explore the CKLA intervention resources. And then next month during professional development, we'll start unpacking protocols that come along with this curriculum. And so to remind you that we are recipients of the PRISM 2 grant from DESE. This is the one-year grant which helped defray the cost of purchasing the curriculum, but also provided us with an abundance of professional development support. Our PRISM coaches were actually due to be on site Monday and Tuesday, and they fly in, so we have rescheduled their visit. But they visit all classrooms K through 3, because those are the grades covered by PRISM. And they're also going to do a 2-hour session for our leaders in each building, learning how to support the implementation and how to make sure that we're consistent across all buildings. In addition, we also have the weekly coaching meetings, which the supervisors and I attend. Those precede the MPS Curriculum Council meetings, which are comprised of educators and administrators. So it's really nice to have feedback and voice from many stakeholders included, and also to get some insight on how we can be improving in our implementation. And so members of that curriculum council are going to be the ones leading the professional development sessions in February for their peers. to learn more about using the curriculum optimally. LAN is the other group that we're a part of. This is a free offering from DESE, and this focuses on our upper school ELA. LAN and PRISM, they've also been very good about helping us include our ELE supervisors, our English learner supervisors. So there's lots of crossover happening. And so we have more administrators and teachers becoming familiar with the curriculum and what we're trying to do in the classroom in general, in terms of students owning learning and approaching grade level material and beyond. And we're also part of a couple communities of practice, which means there are neighboring districts and districts across the state who are similarly implementing CKLA, and then in our other group, EL Education, which we use for our upper school. So these other districts are in their first, second, or third year of implementation. I know that the convenings have been very beneficial in terms of learning from each other, but also there's professional development that comes from that offering for our leaders. And again, representatives from School Kit, who is that third party who works with those communities, they come out to our school and advise us and visit classrooms as well. So it's really nice to have that support. So before I get into the data share for the middle of the year benchmark, I just wanted to make a few notes. So we do beginning, middle, and end of the year benchmarking for our students. K-8 last year, and we've moved on to K-10 this year. The 9s and 10s have not yet taken their middle of the year benchmark because the high school's on terms, whereas the grammar schools are on trimesters, so I'll have to share those later. And I just wanted to note that the middle of the year benchmark for those grades 1 through 8 occurred earlier this year than it did last year, and that was done purposefully. Perhaps the supervisors would like to speak to that later at the conclusion of Objective 1. But they found it was a little bit of an interruption to do it at the time frame last year in terms of vacation learning loss. And now we have a longer stretch where we can work on the skills that students need development in. And at this time of testing, teachers had been using the curriculum for about 3 months. So that's gone from their launch PD to opening the materials, becoming familiar with them. And although the assessment of DIBELS hasn't changed, we do use the M-Class version of administration now, which is the digital version. And that requires a little bit of calibration as we move through our plans. So just some factors that we're thinking about when we're interpreting the data and what it could mean. So the first slide shows Methuen Public Schools against the national average. And so you can see beginning, middle, and end of the year. Right now we're on beginning and middle, and we have the breakdown showing above is blue and green is at grade level, and then yellow is below, red well below. So these are composite scores made up of many subtests. So well below essentially indicates the student is below in multiple subtest areas. Below, maybe 1 or 2. And then at is where we would expect a student to be this point in the year, and above is certainly above. So these benchmarks or measures do change as the year goes on. So we're not looking at an end of the year measure. How are our students measuring up to where they should be at the end of the year? This is a measure for, at this point in time, where would we expect our students to be? So at the end of the year benchmark, that threshold will be higher because more time will have elapsed. The next slide shows DIBELS benchmarking by school. And you can see the beginning and middle of the year scores. There is some fluctuation in some schools where the above is getting larger. On the whole, not much shifting. And then the next slide shows DIBELS by grade. So just the zoomed up view of what this looks like across the district. I'll let the supervisors dig into that a little bit more. in just a few minutes. And for our Dreambox Reading Plus Insight Assessment, these are for our upper school students. We have the beginning and middle by grade, and then by school. So I did check. The middle of the year benchmarks for grades and schools is still slightly behind where we ended the year last year. But again, the game has changed as these students have evolved and aged a year, so has the threshold in terms of the difficulty there. So this assessment measures fluency, vocabulary, reading comprehension. Our students perform, on the whole, relatively high in vocabulary. Reading comprehension is the most difficult category, and fluency is measured by the pace at which students are moving through the assessment. So students who move too fast or too slow or checking their work, their scores could be impacted by that. And so our supervisors, I think this might be a good time to bring them up, had bulleted some ways that they're reviewing the data and addressing it with teachers and then moving forward. So as you may remember, we're down to 2 humanities supervisors, each shares 2 schools. So Kathleen Dunleavy is working with the Tenney and CGS, and Jennifer Connolly is working with the Marsh and the Timony. And so I would like to highlight that most recently, within the last couple of weeks, they've moved through every grade level CP, which is like the common meeting time, and reviewed the data for that grade level and that team specifically with them, along with other building administrators, and highlighting some ways that they can help to move the data, improve instruction. So if you'd like to introduce yourselves.
Oh, hi. Kathleen Dunleavy, CGS and Tenney.
And I'm Jen Conley, Marsh, and Timony.
So would you like to talk about the ways you're using the data and drawing from it?
Sure, yep. So we sat with each, we had a CP at grade level and looked at their benchmarks and looked at the measures. And we are doing a couple things with those students who are well below. We are readjusting our reading support groups, looking at the mid-year students that they service. Are there any outliers who have shown growth? Are there students who aren't growing? Are there students in the well below that come up as needing reading support? We're trying to figure all that out and adjust our groups according to all of the data and teacher input. And then we're also implementing small group within the classroom for kids who aren't supported with reading support. So we weren't doing that. I'm advising that to start because we're in the mechanical phase right now. They have a brand new curriculum. It's completely different than what they're used to. So we worked with CKLA and our partners at TNCP who advised us that all of the the PD in general should be about like getting to know the program, getting into it. So now that we have that mid-year data, we're using CKLA intervention. So what it does is it takes the progress monitoring and the benchmarking, and it kind of calibrates that data to create groups with like skill and has 10-minute lesson plans for those groups of students. So say I'm a second grade teacher. I have the students who are well below whatever the latest assessment was, whether it was progress monitoring or benchmarking. For us, it's benchmarking right now. It calibrates and it says, these guys, these 5 students need to work on phoneme seg. Here's a 10-minute lesson plan, and we're going to be implementing this 3 to 5 times a week for 10 minutes a day. We're also asking the teachers to do the same with our yellow students, who are a little bit less than our red students. If they get support with their reading specialist, they can do an extra, but they don't have to do that. So we are looking at who the reading specialists support. We use multiple data points. We're adjusting those groups, and we're asking the teachers to just pull small groups and really looking at what CKLA has to offer to help those kids, those different tiers.
I'll just add, too, that we also pick like a broader focus area based on the data. So we don't just look at the composite scores. For us, we go into the subtests. And so looking at the subtests and how they vary across the district, and the like prerequisite skills as they get more difficult, like one depends on the other. So we also like pick a focus area for the grade to focus in their further instruction in tier 1. So.
I have a few quick questions, okay? When you talk about the subtests, like in the lower grades, does that mean like you're looking at phonemic awareness or, okay,
Yep.
which is very different than reading, okay? Like it's a component. Okay, I just wanted to make sure I understood that.
So different grades have different
Right.
subtests.
Yeah.
And-
I think
and-
that might be helpful for us to all hear, how these tests, these benchmark assessments, what they include when you're looking for how a student is learning to read. Does that make sense, what I
Yeah.
said?
So
Okay.
do you want to,
I
so.
love it. I love it.
Kindergarten has letter naming fluency, which is an indicator for reading success. It has phoneme segmentation, which is the student's given a word, and they have to segment the sounds of the word and give it back to you. And then they have, and we also are hoping in that test, there's kind of like two measures in there, that they're blending, it's wrong. Nonsense word fluency is the one with, that's two. So we're looking for letter sounds and then blending into nonsense words. We use nonsense words because it eliminates the sight memory to see if they're using their phonics skills. So phoneme segmentation is phonemic awareness, then phonics. And then in kindergarten, they do also word reading fluency, which is a real word list that consists of some high-frequency words and some irregular words, and that is linked to future reading success too. And then in first grade, they repeat all of those, but they add in oral reading fluency, which is connected text reading a passage, where we measure the rate, like how many words they get through, and their accuracy. We're really looking for accuracy. Second grade drops letter naming fluency and phoneme segmentation fluency and adds maze, which is a comprehension. It's a basic comprehension. It's like a closed passage, which is just a passage on grade level. Every seventh or eighth word is eliminated, and they have a choice of 3 to choose from. Third grade keeps those, and then fourth grade only has oral reading fluency and maze. So we look at those, and so for a first grade classroom, for example, I might be looking at, one of the concerns I would have for us is their phoneme segmentation fluency. If that's not in place, then we're going to have problems going on further and so forth.
Oh,
A student in fourth grade might be asked to take a lower measure. So for example, someone who is above on oral fluency won't have to, but if you're on grade level or below, you will probably have to take a nonsense word measure to see if you can properly decode, so.
Thank you for that. That was helpful. How are parents being notified of these assessments?
Yep.
Do you want to?
Yep. CKLA has a parent letter that goes home. We sent it in the beginning, the teachers printed it and sent it out. Can't take credit for that. And did the middle of the year, so it shows them their progress and explains the measures.
Okay. And finally, you talk about the reading specialists. Are students still, is it still fluid? So you may have success and then move out, so you wouldn't expect a student to occupy a seat, or you wouldn't hope they would occupy the seat for the whole year?
That's the hope.
If they're occupying a seat, if they're in there for a long time, then we bring up things like TSS or other, so it depends on where they started and how far they're moving and the makeup of the group, honestly.
I think in the past, Dr. Kolopsky, you provided us with a list of the number of students who worked with the reading specialists. Does that sound familiar?
Yes.
That would be, I think, down the road, very helpful to us to make sure, especially as we look at budgeting.
We did, I think, last time I produced that, find some inconsistencies
Yeah.
among buildings, which has been an upside, I will say, to having two. I don't know if they find it an upside, but working with two buildings, there has been greater consistency in sharing best practices across the two.
Well,
But I
say
can
too-
provide that for you.
Well, Lisa, I'm sorry, to say too, our reading specialists this year have gone together a lot more in the past, and they are mostly using the same curriculum. They're using a UFly curriculum, which is a tier 2, and they're working together. So professional development days, they've been getting together and talking, and the ones who are kind of experts in it are helping the others, and it's really been nice. They've told me that it's been nice that they have someone to actually talk to and piggyback off of, especially at CGS in March, because Melissa and Chantel are all by themselves, so.
Okay, thank you very much.
Vice Chair, some questions, and then Member Maxwell.
Thank you. One, kudos for your back and forth there, especially the CGS to the Marsh has got some mileage in between. Do you guys go into the classroom, or do you take them out as groups?
The reading specialists?
Yes.
They take them out into their classes.
Okay, so I wasn't sure. I know some classes are dedicated and some are not. And the reason why I asked that question is, are the groups in a classroom? Are they in a hallway? I know there's some
No,
They have classrooms,
who have their own
yeah.
classrooms. And how big are these groups?
We try to keep them small because in order to
Can you
have
define
effective.
small?
We try to keep them no more than 6, like 6 would be
Okay.
max. Fifth, kindergarten, we try to top out at 5. It's really difficult to match the needs because it needs to be a very tight, skill-focused group so that we can get them out as fast as we can. So if you have too many needs, you can't meet them all. And sometimes, it could be as small as short vowel sounds versus long vowel sounds. So if a student doesn't need short vowel sounds, they need long vowel, but the group's working on short vowel, they're not going to get it. right?
So I'm assuming, and let's say I'm just going to use 5th grade, for example. I'm just going to pick a grade. Out of the 5th grade, there could be 8 different groups, let's say, or 5 different groups. How many groups? Let's use real numbers then. I don't wanna confuse you.
Typically, it's 1 or 2 groups per
Per
grade.
teacher. And
Well, for reading specialists. So for example, CGS, our reading specialist works with 2 groups of grade 2 because that's our lowest performing.
Because you rank each of those groups on how,
We look at the data per grade and see what they need.
Yeah.
And just for example, 4th grade at CGS does not need as much reading support. So she has 1 real small group of students in 4th, but she has 2. So we really have to look at their schedules, what the schedules are of the kids. We're trying not to pull out of CKLA skills, trying to pull out a WIN, but then there's ESL services. And it's like a massive puzzle piece.
Yeah.
To try, and like Jen was saying, you really want to get it skilled-based, so, because they also need immediate corrective feedback, so you want to make that, so it's.
and the reason why I ask these questions, just so you know, my wife's an ELE supervisor in a different district. So, and I hear the story about how the groups are different, got different skill sets because some are reading at higher level than the same grade, different group, and John Doe might be doing a little bit better, so we'll move him to this group, but Julie's doing a little bit worse. So are you guys doing that, moving students around, shuffling them around, and trying to figure out where their strengths are, or?
We're actually still finishing up some, because we make a first list, the reading specialists go through it, and then even after they get started, sometimes there needs to be tweaks. So we try to be as flexible as we can with all the student services and other things to make sure the groups are as tight and effective as they can be.
It's not as fluid as we would like it to be because of schedules and whatnot.
There's only 2 of you.
Yeah, or even just figuring out schedule-wise. So mid-year, I would say, is the first time we're really changing groups at Tenny and CGS, but we'll try to be fluid. And our reading specialists are so good about talking to teachers, and teachers really want the input, but we're starting to do more of that.
Thank you. I just wanted to bring the light to that. I thought I knew the answers, but I wanted the public to at least hear it from you, that there's a lot of shuffling, there's a lot of need, and you guys are creating these puzzle pieces along the way. So kudos. Thank you.
Thank you.
Member Maxwell?
So just a few pointers or questions too. I know Dibbles, you said measures phonics, decoding, fluency, some comprehension. Dibbles is a warning system for us, not proof of proficiency, correct? Right. So it's more of an adaptive assessment, yep?
It's not like Insight, where Insight is adaptive to the student.
Okay, so I guess let me ask it this way. So Dreambox, for instance, gives a question, then it watches, and if they got it right, it measures how fast they did it, how many hints they got, how many tries, and then the system decides is easier next, same level of intervention, harder.
Yep.
So it personalizes the sequence of questions to that student. So when we look at these numbers, where it's, beginning of the year, end of the year, benchmarks, they are in fact just that, benchmarks. They are not showing proficiency or showing grade level, because these assessments really are just benchmarks and tools to help us identify how to get our students the help they need to perform at grade level.
Yeah.
Right. So I know that Dibbles defines their benchmark, as, quote, "Based on national data, a child is likely to meet future reading demands without intensive intervention." With all of these test scores, now I know, the teachers had only a certain amount of time with the curriculum and all that. These specific tests actually don't test curriculum knowledge, correct? They test levels of reading.
They do not test curriculum. However, I would say that they do assess the foundational skills.
Right.
A part of the framework.
Yep.
Yeah.
So they're not standard aligned.
So our curriculum has two pieces to it. So the knowledge part, which is more content, and skills part, which is very heavily rooted in early literacy skills, which is essentially what the benchmark is helping us predict what we should do next to help students continue to advance, to your point. But it's not, I think if you're talking about standards like writing standards or things of that nature,
Just standards,
no.
just grade level proficiency standards by the framework of Massachusetts curriculum standards. They don't- It's not testing standards, it's testing your reading level and your reading abilities.
Dibbles, no. Yeah, it's not testing the standards.
Right,
The-
it's a tool, it's a screening tool. I mean, given your answers, is it accurate to say that Dreambox and Dibbles are being used to imply grade level proficiency, even though that's not what they're designed to do?
I think that we're looking at it as, just like you said with the definition, like what students need more than the core instruction
Yes.
and which ones don't.
Yeah, I mean, I love it when we present it as, we're using these as progress monitoring tools to get our students to where we need to be. I mean, we had 8 of our reading specialists stand at that podium last April telling us that, our kids aren't reading at grade level, we need more support, right? I don't want to come into another budget season and have them say, like, we need more support, we're not getting it. That was last April. At that time, we took MCAS, we got the MCAS scores back this year. It clearly shows we still need help, and I feel like these tests do help us identify where we could target help, right? So I think, I just want to be clear that, like, with this presentation, it says % of students at or above grade level. And this is a percentage of students making progress, not a percentage of students at grade level, because these tests do not test grade level. They test whether the students made progress upon themselves.
No, they test where they are in relation to a benchmark that is set for grade level at a specific time. I think saying whether that's grade level or not, I do feel that a lot of people use that interchangeably.
Right.
However, I think that it's not, we are looking for their growth always.
Right.
But we are also measuring them against a benchmark.
So a benchmark, right?
Yeah.
The benchmark is not a state standard.
My impression is that you're doing a diagnostic testing
Right.
of the student versus a standards-based testing formula, like the National Assessment of Educational Progress or an SAT or
Right.
the MCAS. So we have to differentiate between the two vehicles.
I agree.
I think if you can diagnose a kid in terms of deficiencies, just like if someone has a speech impediment, but they have high intelligence, I think that's the proper course of action. And then to be able to follow up on an individualized basis. But to equate like standards-based testing, I think if you take a practice test, it's not going to have the same weight as an SAT
Right.
test. And I think what was problematic was we took away the MCAS as a measurement, and we're just doing the test. And I think it's implicated in how kids with their test results. But we have,
Well-
this is always was a diagnostic tool.
Right.
What happened was, a couple of years ago, we were changing some of the diagnostic tools and changing some of the testing and adapting to a new test. And then we were still going to a previous benchmark where we should have just started from scratch. That was the problem I had from a couple of years ago.
Yeah, so I just wanted to clarify for, people at home, what these tests were, just because I know there's a lot of confusion with it. I know, I just don't want people to assume that these are standardized tests and these are showing grade level proficiency when they're showing grade level progress. And we're monitoring how they're progressing and making progress, because they are making progress. That's very evident, But unfortunately, these tests are not aligned with Massachusetts state standards, so they're not showing proficiency or mastery. They're really just showing skill set.
Yeah, I think.
Yeah.
So the green bar, which here we're calling otherwise known as core support, indicates that if the student carried about their day and attended their ELA class, it's very likely they wouldn't need any intervention. They're where we would expect them to be for this age and grade, which syncs with reading standards and what we would expect of that grade. And so you're right in that these are our internal markings, and certainly that we share with families, that we use and are sharing out quarterly as progress to update the committee on how we're progressing and how students are growing. So it's not meant to be alarming in any way, and we do hope that students who are performing well below, as we'll say, or needing support in multiple areas, need support in fewer areas as time goes on. But there's a million ways to slice this and cases you could look at. But at this point in time, considering we just unboxed the curriculum and are now getting into the beyond the mechanical use, I think that we're pleased with how it's going thus far. And I will just move ahead to one slide because I wanted to highlight this in light of the discussion earlier about reading specialists and how few kids can get to them. And as you can see, we have many students who are in need of that very small group targeted support. We had applied to be part of the early literacy high dosage tutoring from DESE, and we found out just last week when I was actually creating this presentation that we were awarded, which is excellent. And we've done this a couple years ago, and I think our teachers have asked for it again. And so you can see here that we've been awarded 80 seats at the Timony, 80 at the Tenney, 60 at CGS, and 30 at Marsh. And so this particular initiative is targeting grade 1 students who fall into, and they equate this to DIBELS because that's one of the certified benchmarking tests for why we were awarded, the red category. And then you can creep into the yellow category too, but once you've covered those students, then you can go into other grades. But grade 1 is really the focus, and it's through a third-party group who we will meet, I believe, tomorrow. But we're able to hire our own staff to provide the support, and so it was really nice. Last year, or year before, I don't think that we had as many seats. So this could be, depending on how the third-party group lets us structure it, 16 groups that could carry at some schools throughout the end of the year. We had done before school before. We could talk about after school. So there's lots of ideas of how we can deliver this, but this will also help alleviate some of the stress on the reading specialists, because students who may be in these high-dosage tutoring groups can be removed from that list, and students who may not have access for one reason or another to these groups could join the reading specialist group. So that's going to be tremendously helpful to us, and so we're excited about that award.
You had mentioned the red and yellow and green areas. That shows us that the child is meeting benchmarks, right?
The green.
I'm sorry, the green shows they're meeting the benchmark.
Yeah, and the yellow and red show that in some of those subtests that were mentioned, they didn't fare as well.
So they're below that benchmark.
And so in red, there would be multiple subtests where they were below where they should be.
So are they all getting the same tests as their peers, or is it different based off of that child's need?
Same test.
Same test, so it's for this point in time,
Yep,
in this grade, this is the test
all
they're
getting the
given.
same questions.
Yep, same exact test.
Because it's a benchmark, so it's measured against, this is what you should be able to read at this.
At this time?
Yeah.
Okay. So if a child in, let's say, fourth grade is at a 1.3 comprehension level, you would say that they would be well below and they'd require intervention?
Are you talking about in Dreambox?
Sure, yeah.
Yeah, if they were a 1.3 in Dreambox, and they are definitely well below, but we would probably look at their DIBELS measures to see why they aren't reading to where they need to be, as opposed to why they aren't comprehending.
So you would use both tests and kind of see?
Yep.
Okay. And do you ever take the MCAS into consideration as well and kind of break those down? Because I know you could see like question by question. Because maybe those kids need help with the same stuff, and you could group them together based off of that, too.
In upper school, which we didn't have an upper school reading specialist at our schools last year. This year, we are now at Timony and Tenny, so there's an upper school reading specialist. And so that is part of the data set, how they did, along with Dreambox. But we also will, when they, if those two numbers aren't looking good, we'll go ahead and do a DIBELS real quick to see, and then like do further assessment if needed. Dreambox is, like, we wouldn't use that as a standalone. If it-
Sure.
We
Thank
look
you.
at, for attending CGS, for our WIN groups, we're looking at MCAS data in the Dreambox, and we're looking especially at SGP, so that's their growth for MCAS, so we're like, oh, this student is either, like, they could be on the cusp of MCAS, but they have a really low SGP, did they not try last year? Let's look at their writing, oh, they didn't fill it in, so we're trying to have like goal-setting conferences with them. So the MCAS data does fit in there along with the Dreambox, and then in fourth grade, you get it all, so it's, we are trying to become data-centric and trying to work with teachers to talk about it more and to manipulate it. And this year, with the new curriculum, it's been more, last year was my first year at Methuen, and Reading Success was a really great place to do all of that. So now we're learning how to do it within CKLA and our systems that we have in place, especially since we do have so many kids who need reading support and we don't have enough reading specialists.
Right.
So we're trying, and the teachers have been so great about it, and so,
I appreciate it, thank you.
yeah.
Excuse me, Member Willett.
Yep, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just want to emphasize again, and I know I've mentioned in years past, and we've had an influx with leadership with the school system. In terms of a grant writer, now, I know you have a lot on your plate, and we were able to be successful with a couple of grants. Is that something that we as a body should be exploring again? Because you're talking about formula grants versus competitive grants versus foundational, governmental, the works. Is that something that we should be looking at? I know it's going to be a very finite year again, obviously. We might have to do some cutbacks, but if we have to look at strategically, and you're going to be in competition with other school districts, is that something that we should be exploring as an asset to your office down the line? I don't know if that's your philosophy, if that's something we should be exploring as a school committee.
I think it's worth a discussion. Our demographics and makeup of the district make us prime for a lot of DESE grants. We fit a lot of the criteria. We have a good track record with making those dollars count. So we've been fortunate on that end. I do write a good number of grants, as does John Crocker, as does Nancy Lopez, as does Gina Bozak. So when we come across something for our department, and it's incumbent on us to do that. The principals are helping me write grants for science right now. The ones that are in front of us we're successful with. I do think there is more opportunity to search beyond the ones that are so visible on the DESE website. There may be other matches for larger needs that we have.
Because I think, again, in terms of the audit, professional development was one of those glaring issues. And then also literacy is going to be our focus this year, obviously. So if there's anything I can do from my perspective, and I posed that question in the past, but again, I think you have a lot on your plate. If there's something we can do from our end, I just want to emphasize that. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Willett.
Thank you.
Vice Chair? No. Nothing? All right, you can continue.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We'll move on to Objective 2, reducing opportunity and achievement gaps between student groups to ultimately improve outcomes. So quickly wanted to give you an update on our latest leadership quarterly meeting, the MTSS revisioning team, MyCap planning, mental health screening, and special education root cause analysis. So we have quarterly leadership meetings, which I've mentioned before. Our leadership team across the district is so large that we're split into 2 sections, and we run them back to back in the office. Most recently, we gave an update from the TSS revisioning team, which I'll allude to later, and then we explored our DCAP, so that's the District Curriculum Accommodation Plan. That plan hasn't been updated in over a decade, and it's outdated, not representative of what we do, and really is the foundational layer for the tiered support process. So that needed some looking at. So we looked at ours, and then we looked at 10 or so other districts who have recently revised theirs. I was looking for 24 and 25. And so in teams, we spent some time filtering through, discussing what are some sections that we liked or didn't like, and what did we want this to be. The overall consensus was that we wanted the DCAP to be a useful tool for teachers, because that is, in fact, its purpose. And so this is a general education tool for teachers who notice students may be struggling in a particular area. They could go to this document and see what are some ways I can assist the student that don't require formal documentation or necessitate a 504 or an IEP. And these approaches often align with best teaching practices. So ultimately, the groups agreed that these would be the main sections of the DCAP. So we'd have one on assessment, attention, regulation, executive functioning, behavior, belonging, instruction, and motivation. Within those, several subheadings as well. But what I've started to do is to craft this document, taking the feedback from the group on the sections, taking what I'm finding might still be salvageable from our previous plan, what I've seen put into use, and also looking at what are some common best practices from other districts. One thing that we did like was that the DCAP from other districts does not necessarily encapsulate every best practice that you could ever employ. Then it becomes too overwhelming. But districts tend to lean on a handful that they think would be really helpful for teachers. So we're trying to do that. We're trying to be specific and give examples. I don't think it would be very helpful for a teacher struggling with behavior in the class to look under that heading and see, try classroom management strategies. Well, what? What are they? What does it look like? So we're trying to build that out now. So I'm running the draft, sharing it with the team who's going to pick it apart. I'll share it out to the larger staff. But whether this is our most final version that should live for a decade, no. We're trying to get something that we think is true and solid for us, and then it should be a yearly revision and an updating. And so if we're living in it and we find it could be even better, we can do that the following year. That's a quick update on the DCAP. I hope to be bringing it to you the next meeting or the meeting after.
How is academic intervention, especially early reading, prioritized in TSS? It's academic and behavioral, correct?
It's really everything.
Well, yeah, okay. So how would you say that that's incorporated into behavioral support?
So in the DCAP, it's not going to specify specific with early reading strategies, but it's more overall instructional practices that are applicable to many subject areas. What we're going to see is beyond that, if a teacher is employing all their resources and tools and have tried everything and are still finding that the student isn't progressing, that would be cause to bring the student up for TSS or for discussion for tiered support. So what this revisioning team is working on now, which I just came from, they're just meeting again at the Timoney Library. They're looking at, there's a data subgroup that's working on what pieces of data are exactly essential for the teacher to look at in order to bring the student up for discussion. We have another subgroup who's looking at Tier 1 practices. In most recent years, we're finding that a lot of students who are being brought up are getting sent back, or the teacher is getting sent back with Tier 1 practices instead of intervention practices, because sometimes Tier 1 isn't quite where it should be. So how can we make sure Tier 1 is solid? We have the data. Another subgroup is looking at engagement and attendance. And so we have all these different parts, and also curriculum mapping as a part of it. So we're trying to piece everything together, rehash it, and then look at how these teams function within a school. So it had been the case over time. There's a group that met about academic needs. There's a group that met about behavioral needs, but they overlap, and one causes another, and so it really didn't make sense. So we want these groups meeting together to form one big group and look at the whole composite of a student, and then prioritize how we can improve them from there. So it's exciting. And then I'll move to the MyCap Planning Grant. This is another grant we wrote and were awarded. You may have heard of Naviance, which is the tool that the high school students use for scholarships, long-range planning, short-range planning, receiving their recommendation letters from teachers, organizing themselves. MyCap is the free version with different pieces from DESE, and this has really been celebrated in terms of its usefulness for students in grades 6 through 12. It's also recommended for districts that have vocational programming like our own. So currently we don't have Naviance in the upper schools. We are planning to start MyCap in grade 6 next year, and then have those students begin with their goal sharing so that the whole staff is aware of where students are hoping to be, and that we can give them the steps they need to get there. And that speaks to our reducing the opportunity gap and ultimately the achievement gap. So we've had some members of the MyCap team and counselors at the upper schools and high school start looking at this and are really excited about a lot of the pieces and some post-secondary planning pieces. So more to come on that, but that's a way we're working toward this objective. And then the fall mental health screening overview. Mr. Crocker shared some data for tonight. So there was a strong participation rate of 81% in grades 5 through 12. There were no significant declines in outcomes across all administrations, despite the expected natural backslide between 25 spring and fall. Sometimes over summer we see a backslide. There's been stable growth and not much significant change, and overall reduced symptoms of anxiety and depression in grades 5 through 8. So these slides can be somewhat overwhelming with the information, but it's nice to note the trend. And so the first bar on the left represents 2015, 2016, and then moving all the way to the right, which is our current. So we can see that the severe anxiety is at its lowest rate since school year 15-16. That's for 9 through 12. There's been some decline in severe depression rates. Post-traumatic stress prevalence is pretty much stable. There's an 82% decline in severe and moderate post-traumatic stress symptoms since this measurement began in 2021. 5 through 8 anxiety, strong gains and reports of no concern or mild, where we aspire for students to be. In terms of 5 through 8 depression prevalence, strong gains and no concern, and severe. And then again, 63% decline in severe and moderate post-traumatic stress symptoms in 5 through 8. So what these slides essentially demonstrate is that there's a long-standing screening history in Methuen with a data set, which is really nice to be able to compare ourselves to. There are many districts who are just starting to get off the ground with systems like this. So whereas we're at a tweaking situation or a situation we can reflect over years of data, that's been very helpful. Also, I think it was brought up last year, looking more at the impact of specific interventions that students are receiving as a result of this screening data. So Mr. Crocker has been working with counselors to track that as well. So we know what's typically working well for students or not, and that lends into the MTSS piece too. So what supports are students receiving? Are they working? What type of structures seem to be working for the student? Can we replicate that in another area?
I'd asked last time, do you have any information on the students that are taking the questionnaires? L kids, special ed kids, kids who are reading below grade level, that don't understand the questions, and what we're doing to support those students. I speak from experience that I have a student that doesn't understand the questions, and I get called constantly because he's answered a certain question a certain way because he doesn't understand the question. And then the follow-up, you have a guidance counselor talking to a student who didn't understand the question and doesn't understand what he's being asked, and that conversation doesn't go well either. And so how are we supporting those kids who don't understand the questions? And how are we helping them? Because I'm not saying they don't need help, they do need to be screened, but we need to find a way to screen kids who don't understand these written questions.
The delivery of the screener
Yeah.
and the supported follow-up. Okay. I can get that information for you.
I know in other communities, and I'm not saying Methuen, but in terms of the opt-out process, how are we doing that? We're refocusing with the parent to let them know about the survey. Do they have access to the questions in advance, just to look it over? If they have objections to it, can they opt out? What is that, exactly that process?
So every fall, there's a communication sent from Mr. Crocker to all students. Then there's another checkpoint from the counselor who disseminates the information. If you wish to opt out, you certainly can. And ultimately, before the screener begins, part of the script is read to the student. If you wish not to participate, you need not do so. Mr. Crocker and I have tightened that up a little bit. In terms of the time frame of notification prior to screener administration. So we make sure, and I'm copied on those too, that 2 weeks prior to the screener, the message is reiterated. One thing that I do like is that once a parent opts out, that opt-out is flagged in the system and it remains there. So they need not opt out repeatedly, but they will be opted out until they express otherwise.
Okay, so is there a dual process of the student is notified of an upcoming survey? Is the parent at that same tandem notified that there's an upcoming survey?
2 weeks
There
prior.
might be some serious controversial questions Most people will fill it out, but a parent might want to avail themselves of an opt-out, and there'll be an explanation of the process, pretty straightforward for them to opt out if need be.
Yes, there's a website that articulates what each screener is looking at.
Okay.
And certainly, follow-up is encouraged if they had questions about particular content.
Would they have access to those questions on the survey?
They would be able to view them, yes.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
We'll hear from Member Donovan, the member source.
If I just may share, Mr. Willett, I received some concerns about a screener and looked into it. And my research brought me to the guidance webpage where there's like everything you need to know. I had to hand whoever built that. You can see the actual screeners as well. So, you know, if anyone has any questions. And I also want to commend the principals. I like to look at their weekly newsletters, which are online. Frequently, they will, I think, pretty consistently give the heads up.
Yes, thank you for
So
bringing that up. That is another layer. So there's the 4, yeah.
Dr. Golubsky, what's the percentage of parents that opt out of doing something like this? Is it minimal?
Off the top of my head, I think it's 1 or 2%.
Member Maxwell.
I will say, well, first of all, I want to say thank you because the MTSS and the DCAP, we've been talking about for a couple of years, and you jumped right on that, so that's huge. Second, I just kind of wanted to give a little bit of comfort, maybe. I opted out of mental health surveys maybe 2 or 3 years ago, and I since have not had any issues with anybody giving a survey to any of my kids. I mean, once you're on that opt-out list, it follows you yearly, and you do not have to opt out again. I just wanted to provide comfort for maybe somebody who may not know that. So, thank you.
Thank you. And then also wanted to highlight that through special education department, so Ms. Bozek, myself, and Sarah Brown from the high school special education team has been working to identify root causes of the following data points. So grammar school academic proficiency, specifically grades 4 through 8 in ELA and math. High school academic proficiency, specifically in grade 10, ELA and math. So those would be MCAS-driven results. The graduation rate of students with disabilities and the dropout rate of students with disabilities. So those are 4 areas that we find ourselves below the state or significant gaps between our own data set that deserved a little bit more attention. So we're using our resources to help dig a little deeper there. The next steps would be to develop an action plan and then to use some of the Fund Code 240, that's a grant, monies to implement that action plan and then to progress monitor. So I have some ideas of the cause, but when we jump to conclusions without really taking the time to go back and carefully look at the data and articulate what that root cause is, it's just a guess that could lead to a dead end. So we're taking time to do that well. And finally, objective 3, ultimately to enhance partnerships with students and families and trying to build that sense of belonging within the school community. Just wanted to give the quick update on the MPS Portrait of a Learner / Vision of a Graduate. We've decided on a name, Vision of a Graduate, after much debate. And then I had talked about last year in Infinite Campus, we tracked student participation in extracurricular activities and athletics, which was really interesting to see the percentage of students in grade 9 who are taking advantage of what we offer. I did begin to administer that survey to try to figure out what the barriers could be to participation. And I'll update you on the CTE Exploratory, both the grade 9 and grade 8 experience. We have some caseload monitoring updates, some presentations that our students received and then where we're heading with bullying prevention. So the portrait of a learner, again, to remind the public, on February 5th from 5 to 6:30 at the Nevins Memorial Library in that hall upstairs, our students are going to be leading a workshop to get some feedback from the community on what they think a graduate from Methuen High School should be able to do, how they should handle themselves. And so really all feedback is valuable to us. Those in the workforce can tell us the skills that they think are important for students to have. Families can tell us about qualities they think would be important for students to have. The work up to this point, and while the work was happening within our working groups at the high school and faculty groups and student groups, that is when the state vision of a graduate came out. And so luckily, our directions aligned. So right now, we're looking to detail the vision of the graduate in terms of the operational definitions for the competencies. So for instance, if we all agree communication is important, do we have the same idea of what communication is and how can we help our students get there? So defining those terms will be the work of that day. We had hoped to have a draft ready to vote on. We were a little bit delayed in our workshopping of that, but I think it ended up being a little bit better, so the community can get their 2 cents in a little bit earlier. We do ask if people are able to and willing to sign up ahead of time. It helps the students plan. So there's a QR code for that. Not necessary if we can't figure that part out, but it would be nice. And then the survey that went out to grade 9 students, at the point when I created the survey, not all had responded yet. But I was becoming a little bit surprised by some of the results because we did do the clubs and activities fair at the beginning of the year. We did do the athletic information nights prior to each season. We do offer no-cut sports. We encourage theater and band, and I think we have 40 operational clubs, and any club that a student wants to create, they're able to do so. Some of my findings suggest that we need to do even better getting the word out about, some students said I didn't participate because I didn't think I would make the team, but there's a no-cuts team every season. Also, there was some concern, which I think may be natural in grade 9, but that I would like to put them at ease about thinking that they wouldn't be welcomed by coaches or peers or teammates. That's something that I'd like to address. Some concern about getting schoolwork done. And there was some concern about transportation, but it wasn't necessarily to the degree that I thought it would be. So I'm interested to see when there's more respondents, what the differences are. So next steps is that I'm going to share the results with our grade 9 principal and teachers and see if we can make individual connections with students to help get them involved. We're also on the verge of course selection time in the counseling department where students meet with their counselors and register for classes. That might be an excellent time to also inquire from students what activities they'd like to participate in and garner a potential list or roster to share with that advisor so they can follow up with them. So I think we can just strengthen some connections there. In terms of CTE, or career and technical education, oh, I'm sorry.
Just a quick question on the athletics or extracurricular. Do you know how many waivers we're giving on average to the lower schools at this time? The upper school, I should say. I'm sorry.
I don't have the number in total, but I do know of a handful of programs that do have them. So those essentially are waivers to allow grade 8 participation when we don't have the numbers of students at the high school to be able to field either freshman JV teams.
Because I do know there's a few teams going into next season that are going to have a hard time filling a roster. And it's sports that are it just blowing my mind considering how much we've invested over the years in these sports. So seeing some of these comments, questions, is that the reason? And then also, is it ability to start hitting 8th grade sooner? Because again, this is grade 9. To really show them that in 8th grade, this is an opportunity for you to be a part of our program, even if it's a JV league. Because I'm looking here, this is a big number of students in a class of what, 450, 475? Am I right around that right number?
We're a little smaller this year, so just
Okay.
under 400.
Oh, it's under
Agreement.
400, okay.
Just under.
So that's a big chunk of numbers, and it could be the same student, over and over saying it, but ultimately, if we could hit 8th grade, even 7th grade, start getting them ramped up into Methuen Public School sports, especially at the high school level. I mean, I don't have to tell you, I know how much you love our athletics here at Methuen. I think this would solve the problem.
Yeah, we did the road shows in the fall where we actually have the students and a lot of the captains and club advisors go out and do all the speaking, which was great.
Yeah.
I think the MyCap piece I talked about earlier is going to be good too, because it's going to help students articulate what they want to do and formalize it so we can find that interest recorded somewhere and bring them along. I know a lot of the high school coaches have been really good about trying to form those relationships between the upper and high school, but you're right, there has been an uptick in the grade 8 waivers.
And I see it's very heavy on athletics, like band I don't know if band's running into the same situation. I know there was confusion with performing arts recently with the same show being used in different places. Like, are we having these comms within all of our clubs and specials?
Well, and band's unique because that is a class period offered during the school day.
Yes.
So with additional extracurricular offerings. But I know the grade 8, for instance, grade 8 band was invited to participate with the high school band at a football game this year.
It was
to try to encourage that. And so there is some excitement there. Also the jamborees in the field house when the grammar schools and high schools are all together. Yeah, so we have had, our band numbers have been growing in past years, actually in the lower school, upper schools.
Do we still do Dirty Hands Inc.? We do, okay. Because I remember one year we started inviting 8th graders into that program. I'm not sure if we're still doing that too, but it's just, the excitement of getting the upper school, who is now the older kids in that school, becoming the babies of the new school, or the young adults, excuse me, in the new school. I think that momentum, especially when it's something with the arts. I've always been passionate about this part of the school, is the creative side. Is if we can still harness that momentum, I don't think we'll see these comments. Like, I don't think I'd make the team. Like, you wouldn't, like, if the momentum is there, you're 7th and 8th grade, that's carrying over. So I just want to be mindful that attacking it as early as 7th grade and having the Timony and Tenny right here too, I look at this as a great opportunity for like a consortium. Like you use this as opportunity. So I'll just say that. I don't want to repeat myself, but I just want to carry that momentum.
Yeah, I think the grade 8 participants have had really good experiences, and parents have commented to me that they've been surprised at how welcomed the students were. Also, our play ball program, I think, is helping students get involved at an earlier age.
And if I could build on what Member DiZoglio said, pre-COVID, I remember like the Dirty Hands Inc. group coming, touring the schools
Yes.
and performing, and the students going wild, because
Yes.
it really is an innovative, creative,
Yeah.
wild
Yeah.
group that defies description sometimes, right?
The lights went black and the
It's just-
guys were all highlighted
Yeah,
doing the.
but- And I know, like, there was more of that, and then, we had COVID, whether it was COVID or we had to, it was, you're pulling kids out of class. That's the other
Right.
thing. But maybe it's something, and timing is everything, it's usually around MCAS. So I think it's something worthy of a discussion, or if you would be so kind to ask your team.
Sure.
Yeah. or even walk some kids over. I don't know. But I remember the Dirty Hands Inc. reception was just insane, and everyone wanted to join band after watching.
Such an impressive show.
Yeah, but thank you for that.
Member Maxwell?
Just a couple things, just talking about the partnership with students and families. Play Ball, it's a great program, and I think it does kind of introduce the level of sports. So I would love to continue that program. One thing that I wanted to ask about was just going off of Member DeZoglio's with the theater and fine arts department. Can we offer like each school has theater, they each do a play. I know that, field trips and everything are kind of tough at times. Can we do maybe a show or a performance for grades K through 4 with our theater group as an enrichment opportunity for them to kind of see like, oh, this is actually kind of cool. Let's join theater,
I know there in many of the grammar schools, they do something like that within their own building. Like their upper school drama will put on the show for the lower school. They'll also do that with band, especially around the holiday time. I think they had some of the kindergarten first graders in.
I've never seen it. I think it's a great idea. I mean, those kids would love to see these shows, And then the last point I wanted to address was the after-school clubs. And I know, it's contracts and things like that. Can we bring in maybe like a parent volunteer at, let's say, the CGS who does photography, and she says, all right, let's give me 8 students and maybe charge them $10 a piece, because the after-school programs we offer now are $250 a kid. So that's a lot for a parent that maybe can't afford it, but would love to have their kid do an after-school activity. Is that something we could do?
At the grammars?
Yeah.
Yeah. Are you talking about lower school particularly, or we do have?
Yeah, lower school particularly.
No,
I
we
just
have
think
STEM
partnerships
club
with
and
students and
drama.
families, it could be a nice opportunity.
Yeah, there are many offerings that are free, I will say that. But we have had parents with experience in certain professional realms, thinking about the CGS, a parent offered and said, I'm really good at coding and STEM, I'd like to do a workshop, and that was put out to families. You could sign up for something like that. Yasmin, who you've probably seen, Yasmin Brita, present a few times at school committee over the past couple of years, has been doing that. She goes over to the Timony and runs a club over there. So I know Principal Reeve has been really trying to strengthen mentorships between high school students and Timony students. So JRTC is part of that too. So that's
Awesome,
been
thank
good.
you.
No one else. The last one actually bothers me a little bit too. There aren't any clubs I am interested in, and I'm assuming that's based off the list. Is there an option of what are you interested in?
That was provided. I didn't share the answers. Some were duplicative. We do offer
Yeah.
those clubs. Others are pretty interesting. And I think maybe a lack of awareness of what we offer. Someone said, well, I really enjoyed Academic Bowl. We don't have that. We do have Quiz Bowl, the high school, so that message hadn't gotten there. But I know that there are several clubs that have popped up in recent years that were inspired by students, and students sought out the advisor and created it, so
And you only need
we
like,
encourage that.
was it 3 or 4? Like there was and then you got like a little budget too, if I recall.
So the way it works is a student has an interest, they seek out or approach a faculty member and ask they be willing to advise. If they can't find one, the principal, associate principal will help them do that. And then essentially that first year, it's almost like proof of concept, where we try to develop the group, and then we will move, if we find success with the club, we'll move that club into a tier of stipend for the advisor. But yeah, there's been several that totally student inspired and
That's how the
weren't
ski
on my
club
radar.
started, I remember. That's how the ski club started in 2001. I remember that was how it started. But, long story short, yes. All right, good. Thank you. I just wanted to make sure that there is an avenue where they could have put in that feedback. Thank you.
Yes. Okay, so just to speak about the exploratory, this is exciting. This is our first year we've offered exploratory in this fashion, because we recently added that 5th vocational program, multimedia production and broadcasting. And that's the rule, is once you have 5 formal Chapter 74 programs, you need to have a formal exploratory. So this opportunity is for grade 9 students. It's a semester long. So students enroll in exploratory, and they essentially rotate through each of the 5 Chapter 74 programs. And kudos to the teachers and Ms. Melanson, who's our CTE lead, in really putting together an amazing program where students get to engage in hands-on projects, learn about what's possible in careers in that field, learn about some of our other offerings that aren't represented in these cycles, like robotics and engineering, early college. And then at the end, there's a wrap-up, and then they move on to the next shop, per se. So we just wrapped up this first semester on Friday, and so I quickly gathered this information. So of all the students, 94 took part in semester 1. 51% said yes, that they intend to continue with CTE in a designated pathway, which means they would take a series of courses and earn micro-credentialing along the way and engage in that pathway fully. 41.5% said maybe, and then only 7% said that they weren't interested. So we were very pleased with those results, especially because it's just half of the students participating in exploratory. We have a brand new group that just started moving through. And then these are their indications of where they would see themselves if they had their first, second, or third choice in the pathway. And they didn't need to choose a second or third pathway. We've been able to accommodate students' first choices by adapting the scheduling of teachers. But biotechnology had traditionally been a pathway that had lower enrollment, so I was pleased to see there was higher interest there. And if you recall, last year we added a teacher to early education and care and marketing because we knew those were popular. And so they remain popular as well. And computer science and multimedia production broadcasting also had a fair share of interest there too. So the next steps for these students will be that we have their initial indication of interest. They'll meet with their guidance counselor, formalize that interest. And then by March, with our new CTE policy that was mandated by the state, we'll need to let students know that they've been accepted, per se. And so while we were doing that, this was brand new this year as well. So again, thank you to the teachers for their flexibility. We offered the grade 8 experience. So it was every grammar school, grade 8, they were bused or walked over with all of their teachers and spent the morning in Methuen High School CTE programs. And they moved through the shops just like those students would do over the course of a semester. We like to have students facilitating and taking the lead. So students were the ones that presented in each of their groups and talked about what they do. Students kind of got a sampling for what it's about so that they too are informed when they're choosing their classes for grade 9. They'll know whether or not exploratory might be something that they would like to begin with. So 61.9% of those grade 8 students said that they were interested in learning more before they decided. 31% were ready to sign up, and 7% didn't feel like it was for them. But really great reviews from all the students and teachers that came. A lot of students were impressed with the facilities. They hadn't necessarily been in the labs or the academic wings before. And then our multimedia room is up here in the media center, so they got to travel through the hallways during some passing times, which is always exciting. Give them a taste of high school. And then I'll move on to the caseload monitoring updates. So there were slightly over 1,000 tier 2 and 3 services offered by the counseling department in quarter 1. This was a smaller number than last year, but they are down a few staff members. And so these were the rates of success for the progress students were making in different areas. So this doesn't clearly articulate the purpose of the service because all services are unique, all profiles are unique. This is to give you an overview of improvements that were made as a result of the counselor's work with the student. So largely improvement in social, emotional, and mental health, and overall general improvement in attendance and in behavioral progress. And 67% of those services resulted in improved academic progress. Not to say that improvement was needed in all those areas, but those are a byproduct of the intervention. And then so those counselors have been really good at collecting that progress monitoring data bi-weekly. We are building that into the main platform that's going to house our data for TSS. So that will be phased in later on as well. As of this point, 148 referrals have been made to Care Solace and Cartwheel, so 129 to Care Solace and 19 to Cartwheel to augment what's already been made available through the counseling department. And when we came back from winter break, we started priming students for being thoughtful about what it means to be a school community and to support one another and to understand difference and appreciate difference beyond tolerance, and to appreciate the rich environments that our schools have. And so in grades 7 through 12, they heard a presentation from Edward Walker. In the 7th and 8th grade, it was more focused on building community and cultivating leaders. At the high school, it was more focused on discussion versus dialogue and disagreeing across barriers or divides. So these topics aren't new. We talk about them in social studies a lot, in English class. Facing History and ourselves have broached these through professional development teachers, but we kind of wanted to get the message out to all students that community is important to us, how we treat each other is important to us, so that we're going to spiral into our multi-pronged approach to bullying prevention education. So these are tools that we have identified as being useful to us and are now designing implementation and rollout. So we'd like for there to be touch points this year and then a full launch at the start of next year. So first, the Massachusetts Department of Public Health has launched an anti-bullying campaign. It's called Stop Bullying, Be the Reason Someone Belongs. There are really great, excellent resources for families, students, teachers. They offer posters you can order. But what I liked about it is that the teenage section, or the high school section of this resource, was focused on cyberbullying, social media, all the different forms of bullying that students might engage in and how to prevent that. There's also some articulation of whether an act can be considered bullying or not. It's unpleasant and unkind, and it needs to cease. And so there's discussions about how to do that as a peer, how to do that as a teacher. The second step, bullying prevention units, I am sampling now. Those are grade level specific units from K through 8. I also got access to the 9 through 12. They're a little bit different in terms of how they're structured. So for K through 8, there's 20 lessons per grade. For 9 through 12, there's larger modules about the school message, the classroom message, and whatnot. So part of our revisioning team for MTSS is starting to look at the mapping of which lessons are essential, who's delivering them. Are we having some counselor-delivered lessons, some teacher-delivered lessons? When in the calendar year is appropriate? And then also they need to be professional development offered for teachers to know what is this whole unit about and how to do that really well. So we're working through all those pieces. We also work with Massachusetts Partnership for Youth, and we have a few sessions remaining from our partnership this year. So we plan to use those as offerings. We're going to see how many offerings they'll let us have. We have at least 2. But parent workshops we think would be really good. Some of the providers are excellent. And facing history in ourselves, we've identified teen resources and resources for families. And then I was really excited with our YPAR groups, our Youth Participatory Action Research Clubs at each upper school. Last year, we heard from grade 8 at the Timony through their, not grade 8, 5 through 8, 6 through 8 at the Timony, about their interest as their YPAR project is being bullying prevention. And then this year, a class from the Tenney reached out to me, and they're interested for their civics project on parent education on bullying. So we're emailing back and forth now, the students and I, and I'm going to go over there and seek their input, and they're going to help design some of the workshops for bullying for parents, and also work with the Timony students. So I love when the civics projects align with the things that the adults are concerned about, because they're seeing the same things that we are. And so that's reassuring that we're heading in the right direction.
So for the bullying prevention, I heard that we're doing this stuff, but do we still have that coordinator? Or I don't want to insult the title, but there's a title of a person that's overseeing these cases.
Handling the investigations,
Correct.
yes.
Are they responsible on any curriculum or any insight to curriculum? Because the way I look at this role, it should be like a consultative role too, on pointing the administration and/or the schools in the right direction too. So is that person involved in any of this?
So on a consultant level, yes, not for delivery, of course, but I think her input is essential. And the principals have been reflecting on the data they've been seeing as well. We're noticing particular grades have certain upticks right now, what that could be. But yes, previously, we don't have the health teachers in the lower school any longer. They were delivering the social emotional curriculum last year, and would likely be doing something like this. So we're trying to see how we can piece that in.
Do we not have health teachers in the lower school because of budget cuts? Because they were grant funded before?
No, because we couldn't afford them.
If I recall, in 2017, I made a comment, and 18, that we had hired 3 health teachers. One was a former student here that I remember, and I won't name the name, and it had come up that they were being paid on a 3-year grant.
I haven't seen that. Would it be an ESSER grant?
Now,
We had eventually moved everyone off of ESSER, so it wouldn't have been that. They're not on any of mine that I oversee.
But at the time, you weren't also
Right.
assistant superintendent.
Yeah, to my
just yet.
knowledge.
So I think some of those roles were originally at the grammar school's grant positions that we had transitioned for 3-year deals. We made comments about it. So it's a budget situation.
Mhm.
So how many health teachers do we have currently?
So we have 1 in each upper school, and at the high school we have 4.
And they're the ones that will be administrating some of these conversations then?
Some,
Okay.
but we're also going to ask for a school-wide effort. So it's not going to fall on any one person, but I do think it's important for everyone to have a voice so the students can hear the message from multiple parties in their school. So we'll be asking some counselors, some teachers, but that's what we're mapping out now. So to do 20 grade level specific lessons, that would be a big ask.
Yeah.
So we're going to look at, what are the essential themes that we're looking to integrate. But it did come up also in our mapping of supports that we were very light in K4 in bullying, and then also in high school. So it's nice that we're addressing that.
Thank
excuse me, going back to the caseload monitoring updates, is that 1,000 for actual students, or could it be a student that's been referred multiple times to the service?
It's different types of services. So there could be a student that's in need of multiple from the counseling department. So maybe it's a group therapy and seeing the counselor one-on-one biweekly. So the counselor could be rating each of those. But predominantly, it would be students receiving one service.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, that'll do it for the quarterly review presentation. Next on the agenda, we have custodial negotiation committee nominations and appointments. Do we have any nominations for the committee? We should have 3 members. I've been quite involved in the facility stuff, so I would probably urge against nominating me, but if I have to, I'm willing to, yeah. Sure. So
I'll
we have,
nominate Nick DiZoglio.
we have the vice chair. Do you accept the nomination?
Yeah.
All right. We need 2 more.
Member Soroyce? No?
I'll accept if no one else wants to do it, sure.
I'll nominate Member Soroyce.
So we have member Royce, you accept? We need 1 more.
I'd like to nominate Member Keegan.
Do you accept?
Yes.
All right. So we have the nominations of the vice chair, member Soroyce, and member Keegan. I'm going to ask for a motion and a second now to appoint the nominated members to the custodial negotiation committee.
Second.
Motion's from member Maxwell, the second is from member Donovan. Any discussion? If not, we'll take a roll call vote.
Okay. Member DiZoglio,
Yes.
Grassi, yes. Keegan,
Yes.
Maxwell. Yes. McCarthy Soroyce.
Yes.
Willett,
Yes.
and Beauregard.
Yes. All right. Next on the agenda is other business from the committee. Is there any other business from the committee? Member Soroyce?
I would just like to mention the backpack program for the students. Food donations can be brought to 10 Branch Street, or I believe, Member DiZoglio, you said the library? Someone said the library the last time as well,
Right, it was-
accepts the donations. I believe they're upwards of about 80 students right now that bring a backpack home every week, so they're desperate need for peanut butter jelly, anything that can be easily made and prepared by students, so thank you.
Thank you. Any other updates? If not, at this point, I will be recusing myself for the remainder of the meeting due to the fact that I am the defendant in the litigation that is to be discussed. So at this point, I will hand everything off to the vice chair. Have a good night.
Thank you, Mayor. Have a good night.
I make a motion to adjourn and go into executive session.
I have to call it into order first. So pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A3, to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining or litigation, if an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining of litigating position of the public body, and the chair so declares, Essex Superior Court Civil Action Number 2577, C as in Charlie, V as in Victor, 00627. We will go into executive session and not come back into regular session afterwards. Do I have a motion and a second?
So moved.
Second.
Member Soroyce and seconded by Member Keegan. Roll call, please. Yes.
Donovan, yes. Keegan?
Yes.
Maxwell? Yes. McCarthy Royce?
Yes.
Willett?
Yes.
And Member Beauregard has left.
We are now adjourning the public session, and we'll re-adjourn in executive session in a few moments. Thank you. Oh, the time is 7:48 PM. Thank you.